We're 1 week closer to the end of the Toronto mayoral election, and some things have happened. You know, people who really know what they're talking about will tell you that this is now getting into the crunch time. We're about a month out, the real campaign. Do you love that in campaigns that you're really paying close attention to when someone tells you, well, the real campaign hasn't started yet? Well, we are assured that the real campaign is just beginning. And there might be some truth to that. I mean, there were 3 mayoral debates just today on a variety of topics, arts and culture and housing being the 2 first ones that have happened. The other one hasn't happened yet. So what is it going to be about? I don't know. I'm not here to answer all your questions. So let's do a little catchy up here. I've got 4 or 5 topics for this little roundup. Some of these videos will focus on one thing. Some of them will be like news of the week. So this is more news of the week. Let's see how it goes. Okay, first, polling. Some new polling came out from the 3 polling firms who have been doing the most consistent tracking of polls and polling in this election. That's Forum, Liaison, and Main Street. So let's pop those up over here. Do we like the snaps? Somebody mentioned the snaps on Twitter. Oh, it was Adam. Hi, Adam. Anyway, there they are. So for Olivia Chow, very much the same. But the big news this week, especially if you were either a fan of or in the camp of Anna Bailão, her campaign advisor, Nick Kouvalis, was positively ecstatic about this, is that Main Street showed Anna Bailão just leaping, catapulting, trebucheting, if that's a word, into second place with 21%. The only problem was, of course, that neither of the other 2 polling firms, Liaison or Forum, came anywhere close to that. They have Bailão at 8 or 9%. So what do we conclude? Well, as I warned you last week, we don't really conclude anything on this particular channel, but it is strange. And if one person says everything's amazing and the other 2 people say, it's only pretty good, I'd say that the burden of proof is on Main Street here to come out with a poll in the next week that shows that this wasn't just an outlier or a mistake or a clerical error or something like that, and Bailão's strength is actually that strong, or for the other one or both of the other polling firms to back up these numbers. Apart from that, I suppose one could say that Mitzi Hunter seems to be gaining a little bit of steam. Josh Matlow is in the mud. Mark Saunders is either in the mud or tanking, depending on who you believe. Liaison has him up. The other 2 have him, 12, 10%. Again, the burden of proof there on Liaison to come up with some numbers that support that the next go around. But all of these, even the people who seem to have been doing a little bit better than last week, those numbers are close enough, either within or close to the margin of error. So we shall see. For the moment, Olivia Chow is in the lead. Mark Saunders is in second, usually. Josh Matlow in third, and it goes from there. Okay. So now on to a couple of things about specific candidates. And let's start with Brad Bradford. Brad Bradford has developed this interesting tendency here in the last couple of weeks, and that is to, how shall we put this? I don't want to say anything that'll get me sued on this channel here, folks. So let's just say that he has an active imagination, right? You can say that. Little Bradley Bradford has an active imagination. It started a few days ago with a thread that he posted on Twitter talking about Olivia Chow and raising taxes. Now, it has become Brad Bradford's key campaign platform that Olivia Chow is captured by an NDP activist agenda, which is in itself an interesting thing to say, as though Olivia Chow were like a liberal for her entire life and then got kidnapped by NDP activists and subjected to like Manchurian Candidate or Clockwork Orange style brainwashing, and now she's captured by the NDP activist agenda. But leaving that aside, Brad Bradford's very worried that Olivia Chow is going to raise taxes, and he put together a little Twitter thread explaining how they would be raised. He cites her various programs, but that's not the part that's not the interesting one. The interesting one is right at the very end. It's number 6, yes, as I'm reading it over here. So he comes up with like a 14% tax hike based on Olivia Chow's promises. But someone on his campaign team, I don't know, Jeff Ballingall from Ontario Proud, who knows who it is? Who can say? I can't. Somebody could. he wants to get to 20%. They think, for PR purposes, you can tell that sitting around their table at their campaign meetings, they really want to say that Olivia Chow is going to jack your taxes by 20%. So they get to 14 and then they're stuck. Like, they don't have anything else to say. So what does he do? He comes up with this little beauty. 6% more on promises she has yet to make. Brad Bradford has many talents. He is an interesting dresser. He has a broad and interesting taste in food, apparently. He's bald. Not everybody can carry that off. Brad Bradford does it pretty well. And he can see into the future. And honestly, out of all those talents, I think that he would have maybe brought the seeing into the future one out sooner than now, but that's up to him and his campaign team. He can see into the future. He knows what you're going to do before you do it, which you would think would tell him that he's not going to win this election. Again, I'm not here to tell him how to use his special powers. So that's Brad Bradford making stuff up. And then this morning, it got even a little bit better. Something like a memo or an email from the city got leaked on Twitter that let people know that they weren't going to do a Canada Day show at Nathan Phillips Square this year. So Brad Bradford jumped all over that, said, "This is embarrassing." The only problem is that with that he only has this power to look into the future, right? I assume that his power does not allow him to look back into the past. If he could look back into the past as well into the future, he would know that the city of Toronto, with one exception, has never hosted Canada Day events at Nathan Phillips Square. The one exception was the Canada 150 celebration, which was very special, happened at 4 sites around the city. Let's say doesn't count in the context of this conversation. The city's Canada Day show is usually held up at Mel Lastman Square. Not sure why it's not up there this year. Maybe they were going to move it and they decided not to. Doesn't matter. It's embarrassing. But he's wrong. Doesn't quite go into the same category as making stuff up as his 6%, which could be an act of imagination or evidence of prescience. I don't know. You don't know. Mark Saunders, though, doesn't want to be outdone. He sees the kind of action that Brad Bradford got the day before with his 6% from the future. And Mark Saunders writes, like, maybe the greatest release of all time, where he says, Mark Saunders won't let the City Hall be the Grinch who stole Canada Day. The Grinch who stole Canada Day. Now, not that it's my job to defend the city of Toronto, and anybody who follows me on Twitter knows that very rarely is that the case. But the city did say that they were going to continue with all of the other celebrations around the city, fireworks, this sort of thing. They just weren't going to do a show at Nathan Phillips Square. And the other thing that I think is so great about this is that just like Brad Bradford, Mark Saunders doesn't realize that they've never done a Canada Day show at Nathan Phillips Square before. So he says on day one, if he wins, he's going to bring that show back from nothingness. He's going to bring it 0 times 0 equals 0. He's going to bring it back from nothingness. And you know what? I wish him the best of luck. Moving on from things candidates say to the things candidates don't say, Sean McAuliffe on Twitter once again raising a concern that a bunch of us have had, that Olivia Chow doesn't seem to be pumping out policy and vision for the city at the same rate that, say, Josh Matlow is. And it kind of got me thinking, what life will be like for Chow or Matlow should they win this election? Well, neither Chow or Matlow are going to have many friends on council. Matlow especially seems to have spent the last year or so ensuring that he's not going to have any friends at all. And it's not quite clear to me how many allies or what her relationships are going to be like for Olivia Chow when she takes council, having been away from that body for quite a long time. So it seems to me that they're going to have to rely on public support. Right? They're going to have to rely on not just public support, but enthusiastic, engaged public support. And there's really only one chance to earn that, and that's right now on the campaign trail. Like, you can tell that there is, at least in progressive circles, because we haven't been in the lead in any race in a real long time, there's an enthusiasm for this campaign. There's a desire to see one of those two progressive candidates win, Chow or Matlow. So you would think that now on the campaign trail is the right time to establish a collaboration between the mayor or the potential mayor, the prospective mayor, and their electorate. And if you're going to be a mayor who's going to come in against the status quo, you're not going to be able to rely on the goodwill of your council colleagues and perhaps even the goodwill of city staff to get things done. And if you're someone like Olivia Chow, who has vowed not to use strong mayor powers, that puts you in a bit of a bind, doesn't it? How are you going to get things done? And honestly, I think the only way to do it is with an engaged electorate who will have your back, who will demand that they're done, those things are done loudly, who will cheer you loudly when you succeed, and will throw endless grief at your opponents when they stand in your way. And the failure to build an active, engaged base of support that goes beyond the kind of people who just work on campaigns. I'm talking about the kind of people who don't work on campaigns. You need to get them as engaged and excited about this project of rebuilding the city as you are and as your campaign staff and campaign volunteers are. And if you can't do that, it will spell, I think, disaster for prospective progressive candidates. The province will be against you. A good deal of council will be against you. Some in an election with turnout that's bound to be as low as this, a good chunk of the electorate or the potential electorate are probably going to be against you. You're not going to win an overwhelming majority. You're not going to win a plurality of the electorate. It's not happening. So unless you get your people rabid, I mean ready to go to the mattresses for you on any issue go to the mattresses from the terms of public support, obviously. We're not advocating anything else on this channel. These are all just metaphors for being active, engaged voters. If you haven't built that, I don't know. I don't see how you get things done as a progressive mayor in a status quo city. I think you need that. Especially if you're the kind of counselor who might have spent the last 6 months making enemies. I don't know if that's you. If that's you, might be something you want to think about. Okay, enough of that. That's the update for this week. One more thing I wanted to talk about, live streams. There's 2 that I have in mind. I'd love to get some feedback on this idea. One of them is going to happen. The other one, I'm not so sure because I haven't quite figured out how to do it the way that I want to do it. The one that is going to happen is an election night special.
Welcome to Election Night Special.
That's right, Election Night Special. Here on YouTube, live, God help me, or somebody help me, as a call-in show perhaps, certainly with some guests. I don't have any guests lined up. I've done nothing for this except have the idea. If you want to be a guest on my election night special, I don't know, hit me up on Twitter. If you know someone who would be a good guest on my election night special, hit me up on Twitter. The other one I'm thinking about doing is going to be over the weekend, if I can swing it from a time perspective, or maybe early next week, will be a live stream where I try to figure out who I'm going to vote for. I haven't decided yet. I've probably said that 10 times in this video alone. And I think it's time that I do. And I think it's time I pick a candidate and get behind them enthusiastically. So if you want to help me do that, again, maybe like a call-in show format, if that's not a completely insane idea to try to attempt on YouTube. If you're into that, I don't know, hit me up and we'll give it a go. Okay? So stay tuned for news of Josh Picks a Candidate live stream and election night special right here on the old YouTube channel. Okay? So, thanks for coming by. Until next time, see ya.